We will start the session with our usual prayers. So just remembering the divine. So just be comfortable with your position, be comfortable with your breath, come into the receptive mode, receive the knowledge. Let us chant three Omkars and our prayer of team spirit. Breathe in. Om. Breathe in. Om. Breathe in. Om. Sahana vavatu, sahano bhunaktu, sah viryam karavavahai, tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you once again. And today we are going to talk about this PCOS topic, and we have an eminent doctor with us. She is from Punjab and a very nice, friendly lady. I have been friends with her for quite some time, quite many years. And she has always been so helpful in spite of her good practice. She is opting for Ayurveda always. She has never left the hand of Ayurveda. So Dr. Baljot Kaur we have with us today, and she is the professor at Sri Kartar Singh Ayurvedic College, Ludhiana, and she is also into the writing, where she has written about contributed to one chapter in the book of ethnobotany. That's volume 5, I suppose. And she has been a guest at many shows on the radio and television about different health topics, Ayurveda perspective. Yes, Shahid Kartar Singh Ayurvedic College. Yes, yes. So you must be knowing Manisha ji, Dr. Baljot. So she is a very friendly lady, and you can see, I mean, she must be really following the Ayurveda way in her life as well, because when you see her, you can see, that when we talk about the धातुस, so धातुस are व्यक्ति के लक्षण. तो कुछ धातुओं का मतलब मुझे तो लगता है कि ओजस्वी व्यक्ति के लक्षण उनके अंदर दिखाई देते हैं. So I'm really happy to welcome her. Welcome, Dr. Baljot.
Thank you for giving this opportunity to share about Ayurveda.
Yeah, always. I mean, it's a pleasure to hear you. I have listened to lot many talks of yours, and we see you very active in the Facebook and social media, also posting nice things. You have helped many patients, I know. So today, Dr. Baljot is going to talk to us about the PCOS, Ayurveda perspective, and even the modern aspects. And now her talk only will reflect her knowledge. So over to you, Dr. Baljot.
Okay, thank you. Give me the option first. Okay.
Yeah, it's there.
Just a minute. Try to share Ayurveda. I'm also just learning. Ayurveda.
That's a sign of a good teacher. The teacher thinks that the person is a student yet.
Give me a minute. I'll just.
Yeah. You take your time, arrange your screen.
Yes, ma'am. Your screen is showing. Only a video is happens to be off.
Yeah, I'll just start that also. Should I start with the topic?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, as you wish.
Okay. Just a minute.
No issues.
Yeah. First of all, I pay my gratitude to Lord Dhanvantri for giving me this opportunity. And today my topic is Ayurvedic perspective of PCOS. But
Ma'am, do you want to change the screen?
yeah.
So you can just tap in the center somewhere and the main screen will come. So you'll be able to change it. Just tap the cursor.
Okay. Okay. Okay, and today I will be covering mainly the modern aspect, because then we know in detail what actually PCOS is, and then we try to understand from Ayurveda perspective, it will be clearer and you can understand it better. So first of all, why PCOS is a concern, and everybody, like every second person, third female, talk about she's having one of the issues of PCOS or one of the symptoms of the PCOS. So, according to World Health Organization, in 2012, PCOS has affected 116 million women, that is 3.4% worldwide. Global prevalence ranges from 2.2% to 20. Disease beginning in fetal life and extending into the post-menopausal period. So when we will talking about the Ayurvedic aspect, then we'll know how the fetus or the baby in the so that is PCOS is rising in adolescent girls. Screen is okay? Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay. So what is polycystic ovarian syndrome? Polycystic ovarian syndrome is the most common endocrine disorder in women of reproductive age. Now, it is a complex disease in which genetic, endocrine, environmental, and behavioral factors are intertwined, giving rise to a heterogeneous phenotype with reproductive, metabolic, and psychological characteristics. So, PCOS, here, genetic component is also involved, endocrine function is also involved, environmental factors also play a prominent role, and behavioral factors, or mainly your lifestyle, it affects the PCOS disease. And all these factors, they lead to a heterogeneous phenotype. I mean, like the body, how it functions, it affects the reproductive aspect, metabolic aspect, and the psychological aspect of the person. So patient presentation is variable, ranging from asymptomatic to having multiple gynecological, dermatological, and metabolic manifestations. So PCOD is a very wide, it has a very wide symptoms. So that we should know. Like sometimes female does not have any symptoms, but she has clinical PCOS or the biochemical factors in which it shows PCOS. Then, with increasing age, the syndrome evolves from a reproductive disease to a more metabolic disorder. So it can lead to hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular diseases. The diversity of the phenotype emphasizes the need for individual health risk estimation for a patient with PCOS and her family members to provide appropriate clinical care. So we have to go in detail of the patient. So we can evaluate health risk उसका कितना आगे जा करके हो सकता है given her present condition, present lifestyle. Polycystic ovarian syndrome is an umbrella term used to label a group of symptoms that all appear to be connected to the menstrual cycle and to have a strong correlation with insulin sensitivity. So it's an umbrella term. उसमें बहुत सारे symptoms और बहुत सारे factors include हो जाते हैं और जो mainly it is connected with the menstrual cycle or the ovarian cycle and mainly insulin sensitivity or the endocrine factor. And PCOS currently is the most common hormonal disorder among women of reproductive age. Now, how PCOS starts or how it occurs. So main thing is the insulin resistance. Now, what happens in the body is that failure of the cells to respond adequately to stimulus from insulin. तो कई बार क्या होता है कि सेल्स हमारे जो है वो ही रिस्पॉन्ड नहीं कर रहे होते हैं क्योंकि जो भी स्टिमुलस है, जो भी उनको न्यूट्रिशन जाना है या जो भी उनको स्टिमुलस जाना है, सेल्स जो है वो अकॉर्डिंग टू द सिचुएशन रिस्पॉन्ड करते हैं और इन दिस केस जो सेल्स हैं वो थोड़े से स्लो हो जाते हैं, वो उसको रिस्पॉन्ड नहीं कर पाते हैं. उसकी वजह से एक विशियस साइकिल बनना शुरू हो जाता है जिससे ब्लड शुगर लेवल्स बढ़ जाते हैं और उसकी वजह से पैनक्रियास जो है वो इंसुलिन प्रोडक्शन बढ़ाना शुरू कर देता है. Then this increased insulin levels ultimately result in an en masse entry of blood sugars into the cells. अब इंसुलिन लेवल बढ़ेंगे तो वो सेल में ब्लड शुगर का लेवल भी बढ़ेगा and rapid drop in blood sugar levels and a hypoglycemic state. So this cycle repeats. सेल्स रिस्पॉन्ड नहीं कर रहे हैं, वहां पे फिर इंसुलिन लेवल्स बढ़ रहे हैं और फिर वहां पे फिर हाइपोग्लाइसेमिक स्टेट हो रही है. तो उसकी वजह से pancreas eventually become overextended and no longer able to produce sufficient amounts of insulin and diabetes results. So insulin resistance is marked by simultaneously elevated levels of blood sugars and blood insulin. So अभी हम आगे देखेंगे कि जो इनके इन्वेस्टिगेशंस होते हैं उसमें हम सीरम इंसुलिन भी करवाते हैं PCOS के पेशेंट्स में. देन फास्टिंग और पोस्टप्रांडियल ब्लड शुगर भी कराते हैं. Ingesting simple carbohydrates and high glycemic index foods can compound the problem because they cause a rapid rise in blood sugars. So अभी का जो अगर हम फूड हैबिट्स बच्चों की भी देखते हैं तो मोस्टली उनमें जंक फूड ज्यादा होता है और जो कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स हैं और जो हाई ग्लाइसेमिक इंडेक्स है जिसमें जैसे ब्रेड्स हैं, पास्ता है, कोल्ड ड्रिंक्स हैं, तो जिससे वो एकदम से ब्लड शुगर में स्पाइक आता है. So it leads to diabetes also. So glucose from sugars is converted to energy in the cells. The absence of this critical source of energy, fatigue and food cravings result. So फिर क्या होता है कि liver it responds to elevated blood sugar levels by rapidly converting the excess sugars to fat. Excess fat results in increased hormone load as more estrogen is stored in fatty tissue and synthesized via the aromatase enzyme. ये पूरा इनका जो मेटाबॉलिज्म है हार्मोन्स का, ये पूरा ये साइकिल शो करता है. लिवर में ब्लड शुगर लेवल बढ़ेंगे तो इट विल कन्वर्ट दैट इनटू फैट एंड फैट जो है वो ईस्ट्रोजन जो है वो ज्यादा वहां पर स्टोर होता है और ईस्ट्रोजन जो है जो वो एंड्रोजन्स का एरोमेटाइजेशन करता है और फैट में एडिपोज टिश्यू में, तो उससे वो चीज बढ़ जाती है. तो एरोमेटाइज एंजाइम सिंथेसाइजेस ईस्ट्रोजन वाया द एंड्रोस्टेनेडियोन पाथवे व्हिच अल्टीमेटली मे रिजल्ट इन एक्सेस टेस्टोस्टेरोन. तो जब एरोमेटाइजेशन उनका प्रॉपर नहीं होगा तो वहां पे टेस्टोस्टेरोन बढ़ जाएगा और जो मेल हार्मोन्स हैं वो बढ़ जाएंगे, जिसकी वजह से जो हिर्सुटिज्म है या फेशियल हेयर है वो आने शुरू हो जाते हैं, जो एक्ने है वो होने शुरू हो जाते हैं. Excess testosterone levels cause male distribution hair growth on the chest and chin and acne. Then ovarian failure. So ovarian follicles mature but do not release an egg, resulting in cyst formation on and around the ovaries, which subsequently caused infertility and amenorrhea. अब यहाँ पे जो एडिपोज टिश्यू ज्यादा हो रहा है, वहाँ पे तो उसका एरोमेटाइजेशन प्रॉपर नहीं हो पा रहा है. तो जो FSH और LH की पीक हमको चाहिए होती है, वो ओवुलेशन के टाइम पे नहीं मिलती है. उसकी वजह से जो फॉलिकल्स हैं वो मैच्योर तो हो रहे हैं, बट वो रप्चर नहीं हो पाते हैं. और उसकी वजह से, एंड ये जो हम अगर ओवेरियन साइकिल हम अगर देखते हैं, तो कोहोर्ट ऑफ ओवम होते हैं, ओवा होते हैं, फॉलिकल्स होते हैं, जो 5-6 इकट्ठे ही ग्रो करना शुरू करते हैं, बट उनमें से एक ही होता है फॉलिकल जो रप्चर करता है. बट यहाँ पर ये है कि उनको प्रॉपर स्टिमुलस नहीं मिलता है, तो वो रप्चर ही नहीं हो पाते हैं, और वो पीसीओडी की पिक्चर शो करता है, इनफर्टिलिटी रहता है, और एमेनोरिया रहता है, और एनओव्यूलेशन होता है. Now, what are the sign and symptoms? जो these are the varied sign and symptoms. उसमें हमको पेशेंट जो है वो एमेनोरिया या ओलिगोमेनोरिया, या तो मेंसेस नहीं आ रहे हैं, और ओलिगोमेनोरिया में है कि up to 45 days और more than that उतने ड्यूरेशन के बाद में उसको मेंसेस आ रहे हैं. Then obesity, acne, infertility, hirsutism, पॉलीसिस्टिक ओवरीज, पेल्विक पेन, अकैंथोसिस निग्रिकेंस. इसमें जो स्किन है वो डार्क होनी शुरू हो जाती है और थोड़ी थिक होनी शुरू हो जाती है. थिनिंग ऑफ हेयर, दैट इज और हेयर लॉस, मेल पैटर्न हेयर लॉस होना शुरू हो जाता है. Then insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, elevated cholesterol and other lipid abnormalities, elevated blood sugar, कंट्रोल करते हैं. तो इस चीज में वो it leads to all these health issues. Then diagnosis. This is very important because अभी क्या हो रहा है कि अभी एडोलेसेंट गर्ल्स में भी हमको ओलिगोमेनोरिया मिल रहा है, मेंस्ट्रुअल इरेगुलरिटीज मिल रही हैं, और जब वो फिर हम सबसे पहले तो अल्ट्रासाउंड ही करवाते हैं. जब अल्ट्रासाउंड में उसमें वो PCO और क्वेरी करके डायग्नोसिस बनाते हैं, तो दैट वहां पे ये हम डायग्नोसिस करना आना चाहिए. तो यहाँ पर मेनली ये बताया है कि इसमें ये PCOS जो है वो उसको हमको उसके बाकी जो और एस्पेक्ट्स है उसको हमको एक्सक्लूड करना है. हमको कैसे उसको डायग्नोस करना है कि PCOS ही है, क्योंकि उसके और जो बाकी सिम्टम्स हैं, इट कैन रिलेट टू अदर हेल्थ कंडीशंस आल्सो. सो लाइक पेशेंट मीट्स क्लिनिकल क्राइटेरिया ऑफ PCOS. अब उसमें मेनली हाइपर एंड्रोजेनिज्म है, दैट इज एक्सेसिव एक्ने, एंड्रोजेनिक एलोपेशिया और हिर्सुटिज्म. सो अगर वो नहीं है तो हमको सीरम एंड्रोजन टेस्ट और ओवेरियन अल्ट्रासोनोग्राफी जो है वो करवानी पड़ती है. उससे हमको थोड़ा क्लियर हो जाता है कि it's PCOS or not. Then if the findings meet the criteria for PCOS, तो फिर हमको अगर वहाँ पे एमेनोरिया है और पेशेंट को मेंसेस नहीं आ रहे हैं या लेट आ रहे हैं, then we have to first perform the pregnancy test to rule out why menses are not coming. Then measure serum TSH, thyroid functions भी कई बार altered होते हैं. हाइपरप्रोलैक्टिनीमिया भी होता है, प्रोलैक्टिन का लेवल्स बड़े होते हैं. देन 17 हाइड्रोक्सीप्रोजेस्टेरॉन to rule out pregnancy, thyroid dysfunction and hyperprolactinemia and non-classical congenital adrenal hyperplasia. क्योंकि जो एंड्रोजेंस हैं वो एड्रिनल ग्लैंड से भी सिक्रीट होते हैं. So we have to rule out कि वहाँ पे congenital adrenal hyperplasia तो नहीं है. So if the patient meets the clinical criteria for PCOS, then also we have to go for all these thyroid, prolactin and progesterone tests. Then if all these are also normal, then we have to rule out like low body weight, eating disorder or excessive exercise. These also cause amenorrhea. Body weight कम है, वहाँ जहाँ पे फैट, हेल्दी फैट नहीं है, ईटिंग डिसऑर्डर्स हैं, और जहाँ पे एक्सेसिव एक्सरसाइज कर रहे हैं, जो एथलीट, इसी तरह से एथलेटिक एमेनोरिया भी होता है, जो एथलीट्स होते हैं उनको भी एमेनोरिया रहता है, और जब वो थोड़ा टाइम एक्सरसाइज बंद कर देते हैं या कम कर देते हैं तो मेंसेस जो है वो फिर से स्टार्ट हो जाते हैं। अगर ये कंडीशन है जहाँ पे लो बॉडी वेट है, ईटिंग डिसऑर्डर है, एक्सेसिव एक्सरसाइज अगर कर रहे हैं, तो वहां पे हमको सीरम LH, FSH और ईस्ट्राडियोल जो है वो हमको करना पड़ेगा टू रूल आउट हाइपोथैलेमिक एमेनोरिया। ठीक है, देन सेकंड कॉज, अगर सेकंड जो उसके सिम्टम्स वो हॉट फ्लैशेस है या यूरोजेनाइटल सिम्टम्स हैं, तो वहां पर हमको सीरम FSH और ईस्ट्राडियोल को चेक करना पड़ेगा टू रूल आउट प्राइमरी ओवेरियन इनसफिशिएंसी, की कई बार ओवरी जो है वो ही प्रॉपर स्टिमुलस नहीं दे रही है। देन सिवियर विरलाइजेशन और चेंज इन वॉइस या क्लाइटोरोमेगाली है या मेल फीचर्स अगर दिख रहे हैं, तो हमको वहां पर टोटल टेस्टोस्टेरॉन प्लस डाइहाइड्रोएपी एंडोस्टेरॉन जो है वो हमको उसका टेस्ट करना पड़ेगा, प्लस USG में ओवरीज और एड्रिनल्स को चेक करना पड़ेगा कि कहीं पे एड्रिनोजन सिक्रेटिंग ट्यूमर तो नहीं है। ठीक है, देन देयर इज बफलो हम्प या पर्पल स्ट्राई या हाइपरटेंशन, अगर वो सिम्टम पेशेंट बता रहा है तो हमको वहां पे सलाइवरी या यूरिनरी कॉर्टिसोल लेवल्स को चेक करना पड़ेगा और कुशिंग सिंड्रोम को रूल आउट करना पड़ता है। Then if there is a change in hat or glove size or protruding jaw or impaired vision है, then we have to measure insulin-like growth factors IG1, IGF-1 to rule out acromegaly. So if all these tests are normal, then diagnosis is confirmed that it is PCOS, and then we proceed with screening and we check with blood pressure, lipid panel करते हैं, then to our oral glucose tolerance test, evaluate for signs and symptoms of obstructive sleep apnea in overweight patients and for depression. So जो हम सीरम इंसुलिन है या जो शुगर के लेवल्स हमको चेक करने हैं, अगर फास्टिंग और पोस्ट पैंडियल जो 2 घंटा खाना खाने के 2 घंटे के बाद में जो हम चेक करते हैं, अगर वो नॉर्मल उसमें आ रहा है तो हम सिर्फ ओरल ग्लूकोज टॉलरेंस टेस्ट करते हैं। एंड जो ओबीस पेशेंट्स रहेंगे उसमें स्लीप एपनिया रहेगा, वो नींद में उनको कई बार उनको सांस ही नहीं आ रहा होता है। एंड जो PCOS के पेशेंट्स हैं उनमें डिप्रेशन भी देखने को मिलता है, तो वो भी हमको उस चीज को भी हमको ध्यान में रखना है। देन मेनली हम जो है वो 2003 का रॉटरडैम यूरोपियन सोसाइटी फॉर ह्यूमन रिप्रोडक्शन एंड एम्ब्रियोलॉजी एंड द अमेरिकन सोसाइटी फॉर रिप्रोडक्टिव मेडिसिन, दैट इज ASHRAE एंड ASRF, इनके जो गाइडलाइंस हैं अभी आज का आपके टाइम में हम इनको फॉलो करते हैं। दे ब्रॉडन द उसमें उन्होंने जो मेन 3 क्राइटेरिया दिए हैं PCOS के, पॉलीसिस्टिक ओवरीज ऑन अल्ट्रासाउंड, ओलिगो और एनओव्यूलेशन, और क्लिनिकल और बायोकेमिकल एविडेंस ऑफ हाइपरएंड्रोजेनिज्म एंड एक्सक्लूजन ऑफ अदर इटियोलॉजीज। तो अगर हमको इनमें से मेनली ये 3 क्राइटेरिया रहते हैं, इसमें से कोई भी 2 अगर हमको मिलते हैं तो हम उसको PCOS में कंसिडर कर सकते हैं। सबसे पहले तो पॉलीसिस्टिक ओवरीज USG में, देन ओलिगो और एनओव्यूलेशन, भी ओव्यूलेशन नहीं हो रहा है या कभी कभी हो रहा है, देन क्लिनिकल मतलब उसके साइन एंड सिम्टम्स हमको दिख रहे हैं, एंड बायोकेमिकल एविडेंस जो हम इन्वेस्टिगेशन कर रहे हैं उसमें अगर हमको हाइपर एंड्रोजेनिज्म या मेल फैक्टर्स या हिर्सुटिज्म है, फेशियल हेयर है, एक्ने है, वो सारे फैक्टर्स मिल रहे हैं तो भी हम उसको PCOS में कंसिडर करेंगे। और USG फाइंडिंग्स में को हमको खास तौर पर ये फैक्टर, ये सब हमको उसमें मिलना चाहिए। मेनली मोर देन और इक्वल टू 20 फॉलिकल्स मेजरिंग 2 to 9 mm इन डायमीटर। ओके, सो जो फॉलिकल का डायमीटर है वो 2 to 9 mm होना चाहिए, एंड इंक्रीज्ड ओवेरियन वॉल्यूम इट इज मोर देन 10 ml इन आइदर ओवरी, मतलब ओवरी का जो साइज है वो भी बढ़ा हुआ होना चाहिए। There should not be cysts or dominant follicle more than 10 mm in diameter. अगर तो 10 mm से बड़ा साइज है सिस्ट का, तो देन इट इज नॉट पीसीओडी, वो फिर फॉलिकुलर सिस्ट पे या सिंपल सिस्ट में हम उसको कंसिडर करेंगे. प्रेजेंस ऑफ अ सिंगल पीसीओ इज सफिशिएंट फॉर डायग्नोसिस. अगर सिंगल पॉलिसिस्टिक ओवरी है तो भी वो पीसीओडी में ही हम उसको कंसिडर करेंगे. तो ये जो पीसीओएस है, इसको हमको दो एज ग्रुप्स में कंसिडर करना है, पीसीओएस इन एडोलेसेंस एंड पीसीओएस इन रिप्रोडक्टिव एज. एंड ये जो एडोलेसेंस में पीसीओडी है, इसको डिटेल में जानना बहुत जरूरी है, और उसके अकॉर्डिंगली हमको पेशेंट को ट्रीट करना होता है. क्योंकि अभी आजकल क्या है, जैसे मैंने पहले बोला कि यूएससी में पिक्चर आ जाती है पीसीओ, एंड जो है फिर वो पीसीओडी का ही लाइन ऑफ ट्रीटमेंट स्टार्ट हो जाता है. ठीक है, तो उसकी जरूरत नहीं होती है. तो जो मेनली मेंस्ट्रुअल साइकिल सबसे पहले हम देखेंगे. इरेगुलर मेंस्ट्रुअल साइकिल्स as a result of ovulatory dysfunction is a key symptom in PCOS according to Rotterdam criteria. Okay, so irregular menstrual cycles जो है वो एक फैक्टर है. Among adult women, the menstrual cycle varies from 21 to 35 days, and its duration is on average is 28 days. Okay, जो adult women है उसमें जो menstrual cycle it varies from 21 days to 35 days. So like वो किसी को 21 days पे आ रहे हैं, किसी को 35 days के बाद में आ रहे हैं. So this variation is normal, and average जो है वो 28 days का cycle रहता है. Then irregular menses and ovulatory cycles are typical during normal pubertal transition. Okay, जब menses अभी start ही हुए हैं, menarche अभी start ही हुई है, तो उस time पे up to at least 2 years जो menses है वो regular नहीं आते. आप देखोगे होता है कि बच्चों को अभी start हुए हैं, फिर 2 महीने नहीं आए, 6 महीने menses नहीं आए हैं, तो वो अभी growth का period है. So वो irregular menses, और क्योंकि अभी जो ओवरी जो है ओवम फॉलिकल्स हैं वो भी अभी मेच्योर नहीं है, तो उसमें वो एनओव्यूलेटरी साइकिल्स रहते हैं. ओवम उसका साइज बढ़ता नहीं है और वो रप्चर नहीं होता है. So hence it may be difficult to differentiate between normal pubertal development and early signs of PCOS. तो इनिशियल हमको थोड़ा सा वेट एंड वॉच करना पड़ता है. Then about half of the menstrual cycles range from 21 to 45 days during the second year after menarche. ठीक है, जो फर्स्ट ईयर रहेगा उसमें कई बार 2 महीने नहीं आ रहे, 6 महीने नहीं आ रहे हैं. फिर जो है सेकेंड ईयर में इट कैन रेंज फ्रॉम 21 to 45 days after menarche. Overall, the majority of irregular cycles may be anovulatory 2 years after menarche. Okay, ये सब फैक्टर्स जो है ना, ये आपको थोड़े से ध्यान में रखने हैं कि menarche जब मेंसेस फर्स्ट टाइम स्टार्ट हुए हैं उसके बाद.
Dr. Baljot ma'am.
हाँ जी मैम.
Ma'am, if I interrupt, there are few participants who do not understand Hindi at all from Sri Lanka and all. So,
Okay.
I know because even in the flow it goes on. So just giving.
Okay, I'll try.
Okay.
I'll take it. Okay. Okay, so about half of the menstrual cycles range from 21 to 45 days during the second year after menarche. So after menarche, first 2 years are very significant. At that time, the cycle starts to become regular from 21 to 45 days. Overall, the majority of irregular cycles may be anovulatory 2 years after menarche. By the third post-menarchal year, 95% of cycles are within 21 to 45 days. However, cycles can remain irregular until the 5th year after menarche. So, after menarche, 95% of females, they start to have the regular pattern of the menstrual cycle. That is, it varies between 21 to 45 days. And sometimes it takes up to 5 years after menarche to become menses to become regular. In other words, with increasing gynecological age, that is the number of years following menarche, fewer females experience menstrual cycle exceeding 45 days. So usually after menarche, when the menses start up to 5 years, uh, menses start to become regular. Now, later age at menarche is associated with a higher chance of remaining oligoanovulatory during the reproductive life. In girls who will start their period after 13 years of age, half of cycles are ovulatory during the first 4.5 years after menarche. So, from 12 to 14 years is the ideal age for the menarche. Still, we have to consider at least 5 years after the menarche to menses to become regular. More than 50% of girls who are oligoamenorrheic at the age 15 remain so during their adult life. So the girls who do not get regular menses by the 5th year after menarche, they remain so during their adult life also. The evidence-based international guidelines state that for adolescent girls who are less than 2 years after menarche and have features suggestive of PCOS, the label increased risk for PCOS could be used. So in the adolescent girls or early adolescents, we can say like up to 14 years, if we find that there are some symptoms of PCOS like facial hair is there, obesity is there, so we can consider, we can keep that patient under the label increased risk for PCOS, and we cannot diagnose it as her as PCOS, right? We have to monitor that girl. Girls considered to be at risk for PCOS should be followed longitudinally and re-evaluated by 8 years following menarche. So ideal is if the menses are not regular, still we have to wait for 8 years after menarche. Like if menses are started at the age of 12, then we have to at least till the age of 18. We cannot diagnose her as PCOS until unless and until all other features are also present. So we have to wait for at least 18, her age to be 18 or 20 years. Then hyperandrogenism. Hyperandrogenism, it includes clinical and biochemical aspects. The clinical aspect is hirsutism, acne, and alopecia, or the hair fall or the male pattern baldness. And in biochemical, there are elevated circulating androgen concentrations, that is the total testosterone, androstenedione, these levels are increased. Then hirsutism, it is defined as the presence of excessive terminal hair growth in androgen-dependent regions. In general population, it is estimated that 5 to 15% of the female population suffers from hirsutism. So in some females, they are very minute facial hair. In some, there are thick and dark hair. So it varies. Now, and then we have a modified Ferryman-Galway score to score the extent of hirsutism. Just a minute. Considered upper lip, chin, chest, upper back, lower back, upper abdomen, lower abdomen, upper arm, and thigh. And ethnicity and life stage may influence the modified Ferryman-Galway score. So while considering hirsutism, we have to look for the ethnicity and the stage of whether she's an adult or an adolescent. So these are the scoring patterns. This is the upper lip. This is the chin. This is chest region. This is abdomen region. This is lower abdomen. This is thighs, and this is the back and lower back. Then acne is common during puberty. During puberty, androgen levels increase physiologically, characterized by high prevalence up to 80% of acne in teenagers. So here also we have to specify whether the acne is due to the hormonal changes or it is due to PCOS. Several methods to assess for biochemical hyperandrogenism can be used. The most commonly used methods are measurement of bioavailable testosterone and calculated free androgen index, and direct free testosterone assess should be avoided. Nowadays, free testosterone is not considered. SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin test is done. Not all women suffering from androgen excess disorder manifest hirsutism. However, 80 to 90% of patients with hirsutism will have an androgen excess disorder. So, this is what I'm saying, that PCOS has very varied symptoms. Biochemically, she may be showing the hyperandrogenism, but clinically, she might not be showing any symptoms. So we have to consider all these things while diagnosing PCOS. And so PCOS is a diagnosis of exclusion. So, and this is also very important, polycystic ovarian morphology. It is a common finding identified in women with clinical features typical of PCOS. So, PCOM is what we find in the ultrasound report. Now, in 2003, Rotterdam criteria included PCOM in the diagnostic criteria of PCOS, where we say that the ovary is bulky, that thing. This introduced milder phenotypes into PCOS definition with limited data on natural history, prompting calls for phenotype identification and more research. So what they did, they considered that ovarian volume is more than 10 ml, then it can be considered in the PCOS. So again, ovary, bulky ovary is a condition in PCOS, but other factors are not showing in the girl. So we have to take care of that also. In adolescents, PCOM can also be detected without any of the accompanying features of PCOS, making it a common normal finding in these girls. So, like I said, that in ultrasound reports, there will be PCO with query. So that does not mean that she's having PCOS. Studies report the presence of PCOM up to 40% of adolescent girls. So usually in adolescent girls, we tend to find PCO picture, right? But adolescence is the growing stage. Hormone endocrine system is developing, so this kind of picture can be we can see, but we have to rule out whether it is PCOS or it's just the normal growth changes. Because of high incidence of PCOM and its non-specificity in those with a gynecological age of less than 8 years after menarche, ultrasound is not recommended at this life stage for the purpose of diagnosis. So as I said earlier, like up to 8 years after menarche, we will not consider PCOS unless and until major features of PCOS are present in the girl. So ultrasound is not considered as a significant biomarker. However, it has been shown that eumenoric women with PCOM have higher androgen levels than eumenoric women without PCOM, suggesting they might be at risk for anovulatory menstrual cycles in later life. So when the menstrual cycle is normal, but the USG is showing polycystic ovarian morphology, although bulky ovary or the multiple follicles are there, but they have higher androgen levels also. But then we have to wait and watch, because they might have anovulatory cycles in the later stage. Then weight gain and emotional wellness. A recent study shows that weight gain in early adulthood is significantly associated with symptoms or diagnosis of PCOS. Right? So early adulthood may weight gain is there. Weight gain prevention and lifestyle counseling should start from adolescence to attenuate the severity of PCOS. So as the girl starts menstruating, we should take care of her lifestyle. That is very important because with her lifestyle changes, with her eating habits, that we will discuss tomorrow about the lifestyle and how we can manage it with our lifestyle changes. So the adolescence, during adolescence only, she can start having healthy menstrual cycle and normal and proper endocrine function. There is only a few studies on emotional well-being or psychosocial features in adolescents with PCOS. Now, these reports indicate that amenorrhea is associated with lower self-esteem, greater fear of negative appearance, and earlier sex art. So, this amenorrhea, it leads to lower self-esteem, greater fear of negative appearance, and earlier sex art, though it is not more prevalent in India much, but in the Western countries, they are sexually active adolescents. So we have to take care of that also. Hyperandrogenism and acne seem to be associated with poorer body satisfaction. And that we can see with the patients that they are not very happy with themselves. And finally, hirsutism and body mass index were negatively associated with severe psychological variables. These results suggest that menstrual irregularities might be related to sex art. So moreover, it should be stressed that the treatment of women with PCOS should notably focus on physical and also on psychological and sexual characteristics during adolescence. So this period is very crucial because this is the growing age. Adolescents are coping up with the changes in their body, changes in their hormones, changes in their moods. So we have to take care of them. Like I always tell in my circle that mothers should be proactive and they should talk openly with their daughters, and rather, in fact, I suggest that male uh, uh, members of the family should also become proactive, and this menstrual thing should become normal. We should able to talk about menstrual cycle normally, even in our homes. So that will give a sense of uh, what do you call self esteem, good self esteem to the child, and we can talk about the menstrual disorders also, and we can take care of that easily, because there are so many myths and taboos, like pain is normal during menstruation. If menses are heavy, bleeding is heavy, that is also normal. It can happen for 5 6 months and then it will become normal. So all these myths, we can take care of that when we start talking openly about these factors. So the normal physiologic events that occur during puberty confound the diagnosis of PCOS among adolescent girls. It is strongly recommended to re-evaluate adolescent girls within 8 years of menarche or sooner. Okay, so if patients come to you, so you just ask them to, or just give them or tell them to be aware and to be open to talk about menstrual cycle, so that they can have a healthy talk with their parents, because girls, like, they are child only, and they are not aware of the changes happening in the body. And as a mother, you can guide them better, rather they are getting information from the internet or their friends, because their friends are also of the same age and how much knowledge they are having, right? So that open dialogue is very important. Now, PCOS in reproductive age. Anybody has any query, or will take it after the session?
Ma'am, I think we can take it after the session. And if anyone has any query, they can write in the chat box as well. So we'll address them.
Okay. So I think this aspect is clear that adolescent in adolescent age group, we have to tackle PCOS in a different way. And now we'll be talking about PCOS in reproductive age. Now, first symptom or first complaint is the subfertility. The PCOS accounts for up to 70% of patients with an ovulatory subfertility. So mainly their complaint will be like, mainly patients will come after marriage with complaint of infertility, and major factor will be anovulation. There will be no rupture of the follicle. Ovum is not released. Subfertility is 15-fold higher in women reporting PCOS compared with controls independent of BMI, that is kg per meter square. So it is more in PCOS women. Among women reporting subfertility, fertility hormone treatment was used more often in women reporting PCOS compared with women without PCOS. So hormonal treatment was taken by the PCOS patients. Then pregnancy complications. Even though PCOS patients do conceive, but there are certain complications that usually occur. So several meta-analyses reviewed the pregnancy and delivery complications in women with PCOS. Most meta-analyses reported an increased risk for gestational diabetes mellitus, gestational hypertension, preeclampsia, and cesarean section in women with PCOS compared with controls. So in most of the PCOS women who conceive, they are prone to gestational diabetes, gestational hypertension, high blood pressure, preeclampsia, or the convulsions and high BP, and cesarean section. Now, the children born from mothers diagnosed with PCOS seem nearly 4 times more often small for gestational age, right? Their weight is low, weight is not appropriate, and their growth or the total the body length is also small. So association of PCOS with these outcomes is worsened in hyperandrogenic and obese PCOS phenotypes. So here I will discuss later on, or maybe tomorrow, that we have we call it Garbhini Paricharya, or the antenatal care in Ayurveda. And when we and during that period we give Ayurvedic medicines, Ayurvedic regimen, and with that regimen we have seen even patients, PCOS patients, having healthy pregnancy and healthy children. PCOS women from Africa seem to have at increased risk for miscarriage, women from Europe for gestational diabetes, women from America for gestational hypertension, women from Asia for preeclampsia and induction of labor. That is, they go into the labor earlier. Then timely surveillance during pregnancy in women with PCOS and identification of high-risk groups improve preventive strategies and management. So when we know that patient is PCOS and is now pregnant, that when we can follow her properly, we can manage her properly, then outcomes are good. So here I'm not going into much detail about the investigations and what all symptoms they have, but I'm here discussing what effect it has and what complications PCOS can have at different levels. So we should be aware that when a patient comes to us, how we have to manage and how we have to consider the reports also. then obesity and dyslipidemia. Now, the close relation between elevated body mass index levels and PCOS is obvious, considering the fact that PCOS is associated with overweight and obesity. Mostly there are obese and overweight PCOS patients. Even lean PCOS patients are also there, but they are less, but obese PCOS patients are more. And nowadays, instead of BMI, we go for the pear shape or apple shape obesity. Current evidence suggests that obesity is a modifying rather than a causal factor for PCOS. So that we'll discuss later on. Indeed, it has been shown that the incidence of PCOS among different BMI groups was quite similar. So obesity does not cause PCOS. Okay, so PCOS can lead to obesity. Hence, it seems that obesity aggravates the reproductive and metabolic phenotype of PCOS. So if it's like vice versa, like if PCOS is there, then obesity can happen, and when if patient becomes obese, and again aggravates the metabolic phenotype of PCOS. Then obesity, now what changes occur in the body? Now obesity, it increases insulin resistance and resulting hyperinsulinemia that we had discussed in the starting, which in turn increasing adipogenesis and decreases lipolysis. So it causes accumulation of adipose tissue, and lipolysis is decreased. So obesity also sensitizes fecal cells to luteinizing hormone stimulation, resulting in functional ovarian hyperandrogenism. So what happens is when ovum has to rupture, it needs a luteinizing hormone peak, and it sensitizes the thecal cells, around the covering of the ovum to LH. So that stimulation does not occur, and it results in functional ovarian hyperandrogenism. So that ovum is not able to rupture, and it starts to accumulating, and it becomes the kind of cyst. So moreover, obesity affects inflammatory adipokines, which in turn increases insulin resistance and adipogenesis. So obesity leads to inflammatory changes, which leads to insulin resistance, and then it leads to more adipose tissue, adipocytes to increase. It is suggested that PCOS constitutes an increased risk for dyslipidemia associated with obesity. So here, high cholesterol levels, high triglycerides, they also start happening. Then, so lifestyle intervention, preferably including diet, exercise, and behavioral strategies, should be recommended in overweight or obese women with PCOS to effectively reduce weight, central obesity, and insulin resistance. So what happens is, if obese patient comes, we cannot directly tell her like, okay, we can say that you have to reduce the weight, but see, already she is frustrated. She has already taken treatment from other places. They also have told her to reduce the weight, and it's sometimes not easy to reduce the weight. So what I do, or what I feel it's ideally, is just tell the patient to you just increase your physical activity. Okay, just don't focus on reducing the weight. You just increase your physical activity, and whatever you feel like you have to climb the stairs, you have to mop the floor, you have to go for a walk, whatever you like. So when patient starts with these small steps, you can feel changes in her physical aspect, in her mental aspect, in her emotional aspect. And I have seen patients who are obese, who are overweight, with PCOS or anovulatory cycles. When they start having this increase their physical activity, they conceive naturally, and the pregnancy was also normal, and the baby was also healthy. So rather than giving them that you have to reduce weight, you just give them some steps that you can do either this or this, so that their physical activity is increased. So what changes are happening in the adipose tissue? Now, adiponectin is an adipokine secreted by the adipose tissue or the fat cells. They have intrinsic insulin sensitizing activity. So, and this high molecular weight adiponectin is closely related with insulin sensitivity, and low blood levels are associated with obesity and predict diabetes mellitus too. So here the adiponectin plays a crucial role, and it has been shown that high molecular weight adiponectin levels are selectively reduced in PCOS. So and independent of BMI, body mass index is irrelevant in this case. Fat distribution and insulin resistance, and it was suggested that low levels may also be due to degree of hyperandrogenemia through possibly an increased action of testosterone on adipocyte function. So we'll talk tomorrow about from the Ayurvedic aspect also, that the Med Dhatu is very plays a significant role in PCOS. So it has been demonstrated that adipose tissue of PCOS has an aberrant morphology and function. In particular, adipocytes from women with PCOS are hypertrophic. That is, their size is increased. The size of fat cells is increased. So that is why it is a bit difficult to reduce weight in PCOS females. And there is an impaired activity of the sympathetic system in their abdominal fat. So sympathetic system is also not very optimal. So altered morphology and function of the adipose tissue are associated with a reduced adipose tissue vascularization and a consequent hypoxia that stimulates a low-grade inflammation. So what is happening in the adipose tissue, or what we call as the central obesity mainly, that adipose tissue is associated with in that adipose tissue vascularization is not there. That is, the blood circulation is less, and due to less blood circulation, hypoxia is there. Hypoxia occurs. There is not proper amount of oxygen is going to the tissue, that stimulates low-grade inflammation with an increased production of all the inflammatory factors and a decreased production of adiponectin. And adiponectin is an important factor in infertility. So if that adiponectin is in good amount, ovulation occurs, and obesity also decreases. Interestingly, this chronic low-grade inflammatory state has been associated with the development of local and systemic insulin resistance, and probably through this mechanism to type 2 diabetes and to other cardiovascular risk factors. So see, this is very important that there is tissue vascularization is less and hypoxia is there. So when we tell patient to you just increase your physical activity, at least there is movement, there is increased blood flow, and as we do asana, when we tell patients, you all know better that these asanas, they work on the abdomen aspect, they work on the central part of the body, and we find results. The patient is also can see the changes. Patient can also feel healthy and happy. Then inflammation, so that as we have seen in the last slide, that inflammation is the cause. Now, PCOS is associated with oxidative stress characterized by increased production of free radicals, followed by decreased serum total antioxidant levels, even in non-obese women, right? So when oxidative stress will increase, it will release more free radicals, and that will cause inflammation, even in non-obese women. Even that is why in lean PCOS patients, we find all these symptoms because inflammation is just the reaction of the body to protect itself, right? So all this environmental factors, dietary factors, they are putting stress on the body, and body has to protect itself, uh, and while protecting it releases free radicals which causes inflammation. So we have to take care of that. Some data are indicative of increased oxidative stress from mitochondria of peripheral blood leukocytes, but this was not confirmed in mitochondria of muscle tissue. So we know mitochondria is the powerhouse of the body, and when mitochondria is an oxidative stress, so how body is going to function in a healthy way. So it has been shown that several circulating markers of oxidative stress are abnormal in women with PCOS, independent of weight excess. Right? So whether it is lean PCOS patient or the obese patient, oxidative stress is there. Oxidative stress in PCOS may participate in systemic inflammation, and together with insulin resistance and consequent hyperinsulinemia, promote ovarian thecal compartment dysregulation and dysfunction of endothelial cells, resulting in hyperandrogenism, anovulation, and CV disorders. So, so it has this in the last paragraph. It has given how the vicious cycle is working. So oxidative stress, it may lead to systemic inflammation, and with insulin resistance is already there in the PCO patients, with that will lead to hyperinsulinemia, which will lead to the ovarian thecal compartment, the dysregulation. That is, they become they don't respond to the LH surge, so they become thick. The covering of the ovum, it becomes thick. Then dysfunction of the endothelial cells, resulting in hyperandrogenism and anovulation and cardiovascular disorders. That is, it will lead to dyslipidemia and cardiovascular disorders. Then insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. So now these conditions, they come in the later stage. If we are not able to manage PCOS in the starting, in the initial stages, then it will lead to these disease conditions. So PCOS is associated with insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia. Women with PCOS had increased prevalence of impaired glucose tolerance and diabetes, type 2 diabetes, independently of BMI. So in PCOS, insulin resistance is there, which leads to hyperinsulinemia, which will lead to impaired glucose tolerance. That will it is not able to metabolize glucose, and then type 2 diabetes can occur independently of BMI. It's not just that it will happen in obese patients. It can happen. It happens in the lean patients also. And in a Danish registry study, the risk of type 2 diabetes was 4 times greater among women with PCOS. So furthermore, diabetes mellitus was diagnosed 4 years earlier in women with PCOS compared with unaffected control women, right? So if PCOS is there, it's not that patient can come with the symptoms of irregular menses, infertility, or an ovulation. These are the main complaints when the patient comes to us. So when we are not able to treat that, we are not able to manage that, and patient is not serious, is not taking making changes in her lifestyle, then it can lead to type 2 diabetes or cardiovascular diseases. And PCOS females are more prone, like diabetes can occur to them earlier than the normal women. So PCOS is associated with impaired glucose tolerance in up to 30% and type 2 diabetes in up to 10% of women with PCOS, right? So insulin resistance is already there, due to which impaired glucose tolerance is there, and it will lead to type 2 diabetes. So here lifestyle management is very important. If they can manage their food, they can manage their daily routine, they can control PCOS up to a large extent. A 10-year follow-up study found that age standardized prevalence of type 2 diabetes in women with PCOS in their 40s or 50s is 40%. That is 6.8 times higher than that of the general female population of similar age. So they are more prone to diabetes. And prevalence of diabetes in PCOS continues to increase during the late reproductive years. So it can be like 40 and 40 plus and 50 plus. Though we are seeing adolescent and young females with diabetes, but in the later years during menopause, diabetes starts happens. Glycemic status should be assessed using an oral glucose tolerance test, fasting plasma glucose or HbA1c at baseline on all women with PCOS, and should be repeated every 1 to 3 years depending on their individual risk factors for diabetes patient. So what happens is, though we try to counsel the patient, we tell them that you just be aware of your condition and just be regular with your checkups. But sometimes, like 50% of the patients, they are not very particular with their health. So it's just our duty, if the patient is regular, to monitor her. Then metabolic syndrome. So after all these things, the diabetes, insulin resistance, then metabolic syndrome occurs if we are not able to manage all those things. It is a cluster of metabolic disturbances, including central obesity, hyperglycemia, and insulin resistance, dyslipidemia, and hypertension. So when all these things are together, it is metabolic syndrome. And in 40 plus females, we tend to find obesity, central obesity, hypertension, and diabetes. You'll ask these patients, or they will tell themselves, we are having BP, where we take medicine of BP, we take medicine of sugar, we take, but we cannot just lose the weight. So these are the main complaints. Now, given the association of PCOS with many of these individual components, it is not surprising that meta-analysis have shown a more twofold increased risk of metabolic syndrome in women with PCOS, right? So those who are having PCOS in early stages of life, if they are not particular with their health, they will land up in metabolic syndrome. And we are usually, we can see among our circle only, the ladies in their in the like 45 years of plus age, they are having diabetes, they are having hypertension, and they are having, might not be obese, but they are overweight, and physical activity is not much. They will say, no, we can't walk. When we walk, we are having pain in our feet and legs. So that way. So it leads to one thing to another to another, like that way. It is suggested that the association of metabolic syndrome with PCOS may be androgen driven. So interestingly, studies in relatives of PCOS women observed an increased prevalence of metabolic syndrome in fathers and sisters, right? So those females having metabolic syndrome, We have to take the family history. Their fathers and sisters might be having this condition. Then an increased prevalence of hypertension in fathers, sisters, and brothers, as well as an increased prevalence of dyslipidemia in fathers of women diagnosed with PCOS. Even in young, the patients with PCOS, we have to take history of the, we have to take the family history, right? So because nowadays it is very common, the will say cholesterol is raised, triglycerides are raised. Like after 40 plus, you get the lipid profile check. They are mostly most of the people it is altered. Hypertension, it is also becoming common among males, especially. In females, it is usually after when they are in the perimenopausal age, right? And in males, it is usually nowadays it is after 35 or 40, hypertension is there. Now, this suggests a clustering of metabolic risk in families of women with PCOS, thereby increasing their risk for long-term adverse health sequelae. So I've seen that when a patient is diagnosed with PCOS, even if her mother or sister might not be PCOS, having PCOS, but her cousins on the maternal side or her maternal aunt, they might be having PCOS. So it runs in the family. If you're just create awareness that just tell your patients also that just check with your relatives like what conditions or what problems they are having. So you have to be aware and particular about your health that you can have. So because it has a genetic influence, that PCOS has genetic origin, and studies have shown that the antenatal care or the antenatal period, it affects the fetal health. Then psychosocial features, depression and anxiety commonly occur among women with PCOS. Depression scores are increased in up to 40% of women with PCOS, independent of BMI. Prevalence of psychosexual dysfunction in PCOS seems also increased and varies from 13.3 to 62.5%, which appears to be higher than the prevalence in general population, because that body shaming, then they are guilty of themselves, their health, their body. So that affects on all the levels. A meta-analysis suggests an increased prevalence of eating disorders and disordered eating in women with PCOS. So, and this is very common. So when a patient comes to you, just take her, whether it is a male or a female, of whatever problem they have come to you, just take their eating history, their diet history also. That is very significant, because in most of the patients, you will find like they just follow the YouTube and the Google, and they will not consider that it has to be taken for a certain period or in certain amount or what. They'll keep on doing that. So number one thing is just like to take drink 2 to 3 glasses of water after getting up at 8 o'clock, right? Though it is said to take water when you wake up at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, but at 8 o'clock you are taking 2 to 3 glasses of water. You are playing with your the digestive system, with your metabolism. So, and this is one of the major causes of the diseases. So when you tell them to stop drinking water, or if you want to have, just take half glass of water, and within a week or 10 days, they can find the difference in their health. And then one more thing, they have most of the people will drink water with food, like 1 glass or 2 glass of water with food, and otherwise whole day they will not take any drink water. So we have to change that also. And that these two things also, change in these two things makes a major change in their health. So these are the small things, like how they eat. Then there is a trend of eating food, or like in North, we eat paratha with chai, with tea, right? So that is also not right. And that we have to stop that. And then a salad, fruit, or dry fruits. People, generally females, eat less, so we have to increase that. And like even in if you see among dry fruits, it's not that you have to eat the walnuts or the major these dry fruits. You can have simple, you can have dates, especially in the PCOS patient, dates. Then these watermelon seeds or cucumber seeds, we call magas here. They are very good. They are very good omega acids, and in they increase the good fat is there. So these small things can be included in the diet. And one thing is um, what do you call that, water chestnut. If they are available in the season, you can have them. Otherwise, you can have that powder we get during the festival season, the Sihare Kata, that can be included in the food. In addition, women with PCOS often have more risk factors for eating disorders such as obesity, depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, and poor body image. So when a patient comes to us, along with the treatment, we have to counsel them also. That is very important. So that was the modern aspect. Ayurvedic perspective, I'll just talk a little, and tomorrow I'll be discussing it in detail. So, so before going for PCOS, we should know what is health. Like in Ayurveda, it is said, "Sam dosha, sam agnishya, sam dhatu malkyaha, prasannasmi indriya manah swastha iti abhidhyate." So that is, a person is said to be healthy when he possesses all these things in normal state. The doshas, that is the Vata, Pitta, Agni, that is the metabolism, dhatus, the body tissues, that is the Rakta, mass, Med, Majja dhatu, Shukra dhatu, all these, and Mala, that is the urine, stool, sweat. They should be healthy, because people don't consider passing urine or passing stool, they just consider it as a normal routine. But I've seen in patients that their stool, most of the time they are constipated, or stool is hard. And recently one of my patients was telling that she passes unprocessed food, like in stool. So just we can think of how poor her digestion is, which is leading to infertility. Then sweat, sometimes patient they don't sweat because nowadays most of the time we are in the offices, we are in the house, we are in the AC, we are not going out in the sun, we are not exercising much. So that also leads to health problems. So all these things, mainly your doshas, your Agni, Dhatus, and Mal, these should be in a healthy state. Plus, the soul, mind, and organs of cognition and phonation are in perfect state of coordination. That is your mind. You should be at peace with yourself. You should be happy with yourself, right? And his mental disposition is in a happy and cheerful state. So, apart from the physical aspect, your mental and emotional aspect should be healthy. So when all these aspects are in coordination, they are in homeostasis, we call as a healthy person, right? So when there are changes in and event, and you can make out with this definition in PCOS, the doshas are also altered, metabolism is also altered, dhatus are also altered, and mal is also there. And due to all these conditions, emotional well-being is not there, mental well-being is not there, right? So they are basically not healthy with, they don't feel healthy with in themselves. So it leads to like one thing to other thing to, it's a vicious cycle. So we have to have that healthy status. So so I'll just touch upon before going to, for PCOS. I'll just go through. This is the what is the normal health. Then secondly, what are the body tissues or the dhatus, how they function in the body. That is very important. The first one is the ras dhatu, or the whatever food we take, right? When it metabolizes properly, it it provides nutrition to whole of the body. So here Agni is very important. When metabolism, or we call as the Jathar Agni, is healthy, it leads to the Dhatva Agni also, the metabolism at the level of tissues. If metabolism of tissues is healthy, it will nourish the further dhatus. So for example, the ras, it has the function of prenan. Then rakt, it has the function of jivan, it gives life, right? Then mans, or the skin, it has the lepan effect, or it has the plastering effect, or it covers the body. Then Meto dhatu, or the snehan. So the unctuousness, or that the creamy effect or the softness of the body, it is due to Meda dhatu, or the good or healthy adipose tissue, right? And that we can see that all these dhatus, they have a physical aspect, they have an emotional aspect also. So because when you can see that nowadays we are not having much healthy fats. People are not, most of the people are not having butter, homemade butter. That has to be taken like 1 or 2 spoons, but it has micronutrients and various enzymes that is required for the body. Then ghee people are not taking. So, and you can feel that bonding, or what do you call, the socializing, that love aspect, that is becoming lower in people. So what you eat is what you become. So that affects your body. So then asthi, or the bone tissue, it causes the dharan, or it uh, holds the body. Then majja, or the bone marrow, it is called the puran, or it completes the body, right? And the last is the shukra dhatu, or the it is of the two types. One is the whole body, or the steroidogenesis, or the hormonal aspect, and the other is the sperm and the ovum. So when ras dhatu, or the first dhatu, is healthy, then next all the dhatus will be healthy. So tomorrow we will be discussing how ras dhatu will affect the steroidogenesis and the PCOD, because then these all have their upadhatus. Further, they have functions like ras dhatu has, it is stanya and raja. Stanya is the breast milk, and raja is the menstrual cycle, or we can say the endometrial cycle and the ovarian cycle. It regulates that also. So when the ras dhatu, the first dhatu, is not healthy, is not proper, because that is going to function when we take what kind of food we take, it will affect that. So we can see it all reflects like what we are and what our surrounding or our environment is. So should I continue or shall we stop? We can discuss tomorrow in detail.
Yes, Baljot, we can discuss tomorrow. I think it will be too heavy. We can take questions now.
Yeah.
And it was really wonderful. I mean, you have really touched so many topics, and it is an integrated approach. What you are following is like you're talking about the emotional, mental aspect as well.
Yes.
And yeah, so even the modern aspect and I mean, relating the modern aspect to the Ayurveda aspect, again, it is very, very appreciable, I would say, commendable.
Yeah, it all it's all I mean interrelated. We cannot separate one thing on the other.
True,
Even
true.
WHO has recently included mental health in the definition of a healthy person.
Right.
So Ayurveda is saying at the soul level.
Yeah. So many thousands of years back, it was already mentioned. So Ayurveda, I mean, when even with us, for me also it happens like when obese women come and we do not focus on the weight loss aspect. Rather we focus on the leading a healthy life, feel good energy levels, feel happy, prasanna, atvendriya mana. So that we are also focusing in the field of yoga.
Yeah, that works better rather.
Yeah,
and then after a few weeks, patient feels herself feels motivated. Like when she starts doing herself.
That positivity, we have to bring in the mind of the patient, right?
And with yoga, I have seen like when you do asanas, it's just not the physical aspect because people have that asana, we have to do asana, like exercise. No, it's not an exercise. It's your alignment of the body with your mind. Like you have to be like really focused. So you have that stillness. You have to develop that.
Mind-body coordination should be well balanced. Very true. So we have a question in the chat box, I think. Khushbu, could you just help?
Yes, ma'am. There are 2 questions in the chat box by Dr. Shubhangi. So she writes, Madam, wonderful session information.
Thank you.
What criteria should we use to diagnose anovulatory cycles?
Anovulatory cycle is we have to get the ovulation test done in the USG. See, it's done like after menses, after 2-3 days, and the menses stop. Go for normal ultrasound with ovulation regulation. Like we have to go for every after 2 days or 3 days, according to the sonologist will tell the patient. And then we have to see that the ovum follicles are increasing in size. And after a few days, only one follicle will increase in size and that will rupture. That will be shown in the ultrasound. If that follicle ruptures, it will be shown and there will be fluid in the pouch of Douglas. And if it is not ruptured, it will be converted into cyst. So that will be the diagnostic criteria for anovulation. Ultrasound is the diagnostic criteria.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. One more question by Dr. Shubhangi only. How long a lactating mother with history of PCOS should wait to regain her menstruation after delivery?
See, with lactation, it varies. Sometimes menses resume after 1 week. Sometimes it resumes after 1 year. Right? So she has to take care that she does not get pregnant. So it can vary. And she should not take any tension about that. That they will come naturally. So because lactation itself is a kind of contraception. So it varies with the female to female.
Thank you, ma'am. So if there is any other question, you can unmute yourself and ask. These were the 2 questions in the chat box. So I think everyone is still grasping. We'll come with the homework tomorrow.
But that is important. Because
Yeah.
there is so much of was that you yourself get sometimes confused, like uh, how to take it, how to treat the patient, what to tell the patient. So my focus was to really understand, and especially nowadays we get this adolescent girls, and USD is PCO, and everybody's like it's PCOD and it's starting treatment with the of PCOD. No, that is not to be done. They are just in the developing phase, so her body is developing. So just give her time. Just maintain her lifestyle. Just educate her. It should be fine.
Very true. Very true.
So there's one question. So there is one question in the chat box again. I'll just read it out. My granddaughters are of age 6 and 7 years. What can be done to keep them away from PCOS? Nice. Prevention is better than cure.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
See, just make a schedule of their routine. I mean, like they should have sleep for 7 to 8 hours, and they should go to bed by 10 or maximum 11 o'clock, not later. Minimum exposure to phones or TV, and mainly anything which is giving them stimulus. Avoid that. Then physical activity is must. I think that can be like mixed approach. Like one day they can do yoga, one day they can go for a walk, one day they can just play normal this thing, and then healthy eating. Okay, they are children. They have to eat pizza, burger. That is okay. They can have it once a week, but otherwise, in the diet should be whatever the ghar ka khana we say, whatever our grandparents used to eat. Just have normal balanced food. You can have non-veg, but try that it should be restricted, like it should be once in 10 days or 15 days, and it should be properly cooked, and it's not just check that it's not very given what do you call the broiler one or something like this. Check that. No, it's not like that. And the packaged foods, just avoid that. And you can just initiate them into meditation. Not meditation, but just they can chant Om for 3 times or 5 times, once in a day or twice a day. You can start with that. So it should be balanced life. Then it will be fine.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. There's one more question. If a girl aged 9 years having breast pain, menarche not started yet, what treatment should we give her?
See, just check with the child if something hit there, or uh, like whether if she is doing any physical activity, jumping kind of thing, and if there is pain, just get her checked with a local doctor. That will be better. And because this thelarchy or the breast budding, it starts 2 years prior to menarche. So just try to have her lifestyle balanced.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. There's one more question from Shilpa Dhoka. I'm seeing a lot of girls between age 20 to 25 who have taken a vaccine to protect from vaginal, I believe it should be infection. She's not mentioned here.
Yeah,
Vagina- yeah. Yeah. So are showing PCOS. Just a second. Are showing PCOS. Basically, is it a side effect? What can be done? So
No,
is
it's
that
not a side
vaccine
effect.
leading to PCOS?
No,
Basically?
it's not side effects. It's just they have to just check their lifestyle.
It's just a coincidence.
Yeah.
And then Dr. Gargi is asking, does active participation in sports prevent PCOS?
Yes, it will help. We need physical activity of any kind, but it should not be excessive. along with physical activity, your food is also very important.
Yes. So I think these are all the questions. Does anyone have any other question you want to unmute and ask?
By packaged foods, what do you mean by processed foods or just like those wafers and all these packaged ones? I mean, what exactly? Is it
All
like
kind of
treats?
packaged foods.
When you
All kind of packaged foods.
Anything in package
You see,
is processed.
yeah, you see, we cannot avoid them. We cannot stop children from having them, but we can restrict that. They can have that, but in balance. Everything should be in balance. If they are having like 6 days in a week, having homemade food, or even if they are having their fried food at home, that is also okay unless until they are physically active, and that once in a week they can have it. So we cannot stop that, but at least your body should be that much healthy that it can digest and it can metabolize them properly.
So again, the Agni comes into picture.
Yeah. So see, one more thing is we say this gluten. So earlier also everybody was having wheat only, and now we are not evaluating our lifestyle. Our physical activity is not that much that we can digest that much food. So that is giving the symptoms.
Yeah.
Earlier, like say when in North India, when we get that wheat at home, we used to wash that before getting.
True.
And in Gujarat side, they apply that castor oil
Right.
to the wheat. So it has some good effect on the wheat, and when we are taking it, it is not causing any major problems.
So yeah, Dr. Baljit, I would like to share with this that when we see this gluten, I mean, all these fad coming up, and then gluten has a tendency to stick to the inner lining of the small intestine. So if you have really washed it well and sun dried it, so that property reduces. And even applying castor oil also reduces the sticking property to the small intestine. It would not allow it to stick to the small intestine.
Yeah, and moreover that if your cholesterol is high, you stop taking ghee. See, whatever food combinations our grandparents or our parents were having, they are scientific. So you know that roti is a carbohydrate, but when we are applying ghee, we are the GI index is increased, glycemic index. So they are balanced. So we see, you know, the modern science is we can kind of say that they are from like European countries or the Western countries, and they are not having these kind of food what we are taking. So we should follow our local regional lifestyle also.
Right.
But formerly baked items were not much used, but now baked items are a part of the menu. I mean, it's become a staple kind of a diet, and biscuit and bread and all kinds of bread.
Yeah, and they are having baking soda, baking powder.
Yeah.
And in Ayurveda, they have said that char, pipli, and the salt should not be taken in more quantities. They should be taken in lesser quantities.
True.
So like even in sauce or whatever packaged food, preservatives are there, and they are chemicals. So we cannot avoid them, but we can reduce them and we can balance them with the normal eating.
Very true. Very true. So I think that's enough for today. I think Khushbu, should we?
Yes,
it's the
ma'am.
time to wind up.
Yes, ma'am, we can wind up.
So yeah, so we'll wait eagerly for tomorrow's session because we are going to get a lot of remedies from you, and I am sure everyone is waiting for tomorrow's session again.
Yeah. So like today was also a bit heavy, but it was important to at least know what PCOS and what we have to consider with the report.
True. So anyways, we will share the recordings on YouTube so people can hear it again.
Yes.
So that's good.
Okay.
Anyway, okay, so we shall wind up here, and
Yeah.
all of you, please wait for tomorrow for the
Yeah,
next
join
session and
tomorrow.
keep your questions ready.
Yes.
More questions for tomorrow.
Sure, sure. I'll be more than happy and ready. I mean, like, it's just like I am getting the opportunity to spread Ayurveda. That is more than enough for me. Whatever little I know,
Thank
I'm
Yeah.
trying to
That's
share.
very generous of you, Bilyot. Thank you.
No, no, it's like every time you read something, every time you find something new. So
Yeah, very true. So I will wind up with the final prayers.
thank you so much.
Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you.
Thank you.